Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back to the show. We are joined now here once again by Andrew Aaron, our resident psychotherapist, sex therapist, counselor, you name it, he does it. Andrew Aaron, it's a pleasure to see you again.
That's nice to be here, Jill. You know, it's a real joy doing this show called Under the Sheets. It gives me an opportunity to talk about what can be considered difficult topics. But, you know, I believe that those that listen in, they're craving information to help them feel good about all parts of being human and loving another, connecting with other people, having bodies, being sexual beings is part of that process, and it's healthy and normal.
Perfect. Well, welcome to Under the Sheets, and we're excited to have you here and to discuss obviously some amazing topics, which I know everyone is wanting to hear, wanting to talk about, but some people may not be as, open as us, maybe a little shy. So I think we, especially you, have to bring that out of them. So let's get started. For our first topic today, what would you like to address?
We're going to talk about a subject that for a lot of people, they wouldn't identify it as sexy.
Okay.
And that's the subject of love in later life. Or we could also call it senior sex.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's this phenomenon that causes people in general to associate that which is sexy to youthfulness, to those with young bodies, those with more vigor, or those whose bodies are still toned and what we conventionally call beautiful. And for some reason, we have decided as a culture, as a society, that when we age, we're no longer beautiful or we're no longer sexy. And this is really unfortunate. I think it causes those who are young to fear growing older.
Yeah.
And for those who are older to be saddled with negative attitudes, a feeling just of loss, right? And a feeling somehow that there isn't permission to be their most loving and even sexy selves, right? That somehow we're not good enough as we are. We have to do more in order to be acceptable or good enough. But instead, growing older gracefully means owning our sexuality, owning our capacity to love every year, every day, every minute of our life, from beginning till end, Jill.
Great. And having to embrace that and that change. And it is a change, right? And our bodies do change and everything changes, but it doesn't mean it's not a beautiful thing. And it can't be just as good. And we can't feel just as good or look as good as we used to. It's just different. So it's a matter of getting more acceptance because a lot of us do have that unfortunate, it's a stereotype of, what should be and what was, but it is part of life and it's good to talk about. And knowing that seniors, of course, still having sex. And when I say the word seniors, it doesn't even sound old, but would you say anyone over 60? What is considered a senior nowadays, by the way? Is it 60, 65?
I don't know. I think it would
even
depend on who you ask, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll just say just people in general of an older age. That's all it is. Age is just a
Right.
number. And, how would you work with someone and, try to make them open up to this idea more if they were a little more subconscious, they were a little more nervous about growing old and maybe more uncomfortable with their body. What type of advice would you give and things to work on?
Well, as a sex therapist and having helped so many couples through the years, and my caseload, the group of couples and patients who come to see me, they range all the way from 17 years old all the way up till 85, even close to 90, right? And I find that those individuals around my age, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, are very sexual, very passionate people. And oftentimes they're coming to reconnect, to reignite the passion in their relationship, because for them, connecting and enjoying physicality, enjoying sexual pleasure is still extremely important. And a lot of them suffer from this notion of, well, I need to apologize because in my 60s or 70s, I shouldn't be concerned with sex, right? And that's just so far from the truth. Many of the folks who are in later life, I've found among the most passionate and most sexy individuals and couples. And they now, at this stage of their life, they're more comfortable with themselves. They're more relaxed in their own bodies. They've made peace with their humanness. A lot of younger people still struggle at forgiving themselves for their humanness. And later in life, that allows these folks to love and accept each other, if they're able, in a way that's far deeper and far more generous than any other time in their life. So the potential for pleasure is, well, the ceiling is as high as the sky, Jill.
Good. And
Right?
it's know that it still exists, and a lot of people talk about that, but it does. I have my friend's grandmother. She's 84 or 85, and she has a boyfriend, and she still engages in oral sex, let alone regular sex. She can't do anymore. She says it's too painful, but she loves oral sex and she's comfortable with it, and she talks to us girls about it, and we feel like, wow, this is great. This is great to hear that she's so open and in her 80s, and she's very vivacious and spunky, and
Fantastic.
her and her boyfriend are super happy with what they do and connect. And I love it that she's open, number one. Number two, that she's still enjoying it, sex in one aspect. Maybe she can't in another sense, but she's like, doesn't matter. I enjoy it the other way. So that's good to do. There's other options besides just intercourse, right? That we could do
Well,
sexual pleasure.
We still have bodies all the way up till the time when we die.
Yeah.
Right? And so let's enjoy the bodies we have. Our bodies are made for pleasure, right? However, we don't want to just focus on our bodies without forgetting about the other parts of our being. And that means our love.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's our love for ourselves, our love for life, we want to combine. It's like a very delicious recipe where all the ingredients have to be combined. We want to combine our bodies and our body's capacity for pleasure along with our love. And we want to use our sexual pleasure as a way of deepening our awareness and our enjoyment and valuing life itself. So those who just focus on the bodies and don't combine it with the amazing ingredient of love, well, they're missing out. It's a little bit like if you have a hot fudge sundae, but you don't get any hot fudge on it.
Yes.
Right? It's not nearly as good.
No.
So for those who want to continue being sexually healthy and active through their entire lives, combine it with love, right? And deepen the capacity of love. And that will help to extend it. And the reason I'm saying that is because so many people who reach their 50s, 60s, and 70s, especially those who've been in long-term relationships or marriages, throughout the years, they're not doing the work that prevents an accumulation of resentment, anger, disappointment, bitterness. And so I encounter lots and lots of couples who've reached this stage. They've been married 25, 30, 45 years, but the relationship is deteriorated because of an accumulation of painful and toxic emotion. And so that kind of disconnected relationship or marriage, it doesn't support the kind of lovemaking, the passionate and pleasurable sex that I think everyone deserves.
Speaking of, helpforpassion.com, that is your website. I just want to point that out, right?
Oh, thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. It just went right along with your passion conversation.
That's right. Help for Passion, passion.com. It'd be wonderful for those listeners to explore the website because there's a lot of material there to help you love more fully, love more deeply, and for your life to be fully graced with not just love, but also a lot of pleasure, a lot of sexual pleasure, a lot of connection, right? Very little, Jill, makes our lives of better quality than when we have a really good love relationship.
Now, what about, oh, go ahead.
The contrary is also true, and painfully, a lot of people experience this as well. And that is when we're having a love relationship and it's not going well, nothing harms the quality of our life more than when we're in a troubled relationship. And it certainly is true for those people. Not being single is better than being in a bad relationship. But being in a great relationship is much better than being single. So we can all do it. It's possible. We're capable of it because we're strong. We're made of love. We are capable of being open and connecting and doing this well, even though loving another person is very, very difficult. It's among the hardest things we can do in life.
Yeah.
Right? It's easy to do it poorly.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, what about for those out there not feeling worthy? I mean, worthy of love. You know, I think everyone deserves love, but not everybody may feel that, or maybe they don't even realize that's what they're feeling, but they're not attracting that love in their life. Is there any advice that you could give to them about bettering yourself in order to maybe attract love? Is that a real scenario? I feel like that would be the right thing, but what do I know? You're the expert here.
Well, Jill, you are human, so you know a lot.
Okay, that's good. That's a good start.
You're on target there. I'm so
right.
glad you brought it up because that is a big obstacle for so many people. They don't feel good inside themselves. They don't feel good inside their body. They don't believe that they're worthy or valuable. And so that becomes an obstacle. If they don't believe or feel like they're good and valuable, then in fact, they are going to create that truth. They are going to prove that that's true by the choices they make, what they attract in life. So first and foremost, there's a practice of forgiving ourselves for feeling bad inside, for feeling pain in our body, for believing that we're not capable or we're not the best or we ought to be better. To forgive ourselves for our humanness, because being human means making mistakes and hopefully learning from those mistakes, but also loving ourselves and doing so deliberately. Loving ourselves, loving even our pain and our mistakes. The more that we deliberately love ourselves and forgive ourselves, it's a process actually of cleansing our bodies, cleansing the depths of our being. We're complicated beings. We're made up of many, many layers. And most of those layers, Jill, are unconscious. Yeah. Right? And it's the emotion, the old events, often painful events, that are stored but locked tight on those deeper layers that we don't remember, we're not aware of. The emotions from there can still affect our daily life. And that contributes to people making poor choices, sabotaging relationships. It influences how they behave. And when we notice that our life is different than how we want it to be, when we notice that our intention does not create the results, the effect that we desire, there are things happening on those deeper layers about which we're unconscious, and those are affecting our choices and our behavior so that we are creating poor results and we're not acting as a friend to ourselves. Okay, so the process of loving ourselves, because love wakes things up, it softens things that have become stuck or solidified on those deeper levels. The more that we love and forgive ourselves, forgiveness and patience are forms of love. It softens and loosens those things, those old memories, those old events that have not been fully integrated or processed, and it melts that pain away. So that over time, this is a regular practice that I believe everybody needs to use on a regular basis is go through their bodies and go through their emotions and love themselves for it, even if those parts do not seem to deserve love. And thereby cleaning themselves of it, healing those old hurts, oftentimes ancient history, Jill, right? Stuff that happened 20 years ago, 40 years ago. They're still affecting us, even though we have no conscious awareness, right? And thereby we cleanse ourselves and are able to align all of ourselves, the surface and the deep, with love. And the more we do that, then in our love relationships, we then are able to be attracted to those who are also based in love. Otherwise, we then are attracted to and choose partners who also hold a lot of pain. And we then have dramatic, painful relationships full of negativity and conflict or disappointment and hurt. And we, of course, know that's not good for us. That's not living out being a friend to ourselves.
It's doing more
right?
harm than good. Yeah, for sure.
Unfortunately, a lot of people, as human beings, we're not all that good at love because we struggle to even love ourselves, right? And for those to arrive in their later years in life with these wonderful relationships in which there's a lot of love and sex is appropriate and supported by the quality of the love and the connection. We all want that. We all need that, and we all deserve it. However, we prove it by accepting ourselves, being a friend to ourselves, and cleansing ourselves on a regular basis through the practice of loving ourselves.
Beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a very important life lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a great conversation. My goodness. Tell everyone how we can get in touch with you, obviously. If they want to reach out to have questions or maybe work with you, what would be the best form, Andrew?
Of course, through my website, helpforpassion.com. That's help, F-O-R, passion.com. And, Jill, I've written a column for the last 13 years in a local magazine, and it's all about love and relationships. Early on, it was about sex, but then they got a little uncomfortable with the topic of sex. So they told me to tone it down, and it's just about love and relationship, but also about humanness. Okay. And a lot of those articles are on my website, so available for those who visit the website. And much of that material is just there so people can learn, people can grow. They don't need to enter therapy just to derive benefit from some of that material. But there's also some books on the website. There's one book that contains many of those articles. There's a book I've written about sexual performance anxiety and the struggle men have about sexual confidence and maintaining erections, but also the pain it causes in those heterosexual relationships, the pain it causes to female partners. It's a tremendously painful situation. But there's also some ebooks there and some free material available for download regarding some suggestions for improved sexual activity and sexual pleasure, about anger and ways to cope better with anger, as well as some resources for practicing to relax. And I also teach about meditation. And meditation is a wonderfully, subtly powerful practice that helps us love ourselves and cleanse ourselves of toxic emotion, right? And self-hate or self-disappointment, right? Because it's so important that we understand how tremendously valuable and important we each are.
Beautiful.
All right. Yes. And we deserve the best. And we can help to create that through living healthy lives and treating ourselves as valuable, even if at first we don't feel it inside. Right? So important.
Can I ask you about When Soft is Hard? That is your book.
That's right.
Yeah. Good. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what that means exactly?
When soft is hard, that's among the most painful, difficult, embarrassing experiences a man can have. is when he's determined to satisfy his female partner in moments of intimacy, wants to, but finds he's unable to. Because when his penis is soft and he needs it to be hard, well, emotionally, that's very hard, right? It causes a man to feel like he has failed at his primal masculine obligation. Men, they live for that. And if a man fails in that moment, he feels that to his core, he has no masculine value. And it is so painful and so embarrassing for him that many, many men who experience that, and most do at some point in their life, they become terrified of every subsequent sexual opportunity.
Hence, they become different people, right? They're blocking emotion, they're blocking love, they're avoiding sex, they're avoiding people. So it's got to take a real, let alone the physical toll, but it's the whole emotional, mental tone. It's really damaging. But it's good to know you're not alone, because so many people have this problem out there, and it's hard for people to understand. But obviously, I'm sure you know the statistics on that. But do you know any statistics of one in how many men will be affected by something like this?
I don't know any specific statistics. However, I do know that most men at some point in their life will have the experience of wanting to be aroused, needing to be aroused, and finding out that he's not sufficiently hard.
Got it.
And those men who do have a tendency towards anxiety and some lack of confidence will become so terrified that he will get trapped in an emotional cycle, a self-fulfilling prophecy, in which, because he had that experience, the next time he wants to be sexually active and sexually successful, his anxiety will interfere and prevent him from succeeding. And so it becomes a vicious cycle in which, because he's afraid he'll fail, he will in fact fail.
Yeah.
Right? And this is an emotionally based problem. It's all in his head, right? But it has such gravitational pull that once it occurs, he cannot escape this cycle. And often female partners are so hurt, they take it very personally. Most women react by believing that it's a testimony to her attractiveness, desirability, and sexiness. And she takes his lack of arousal as she's not sufficiently attractive, that he does not desire her. And so she often then reacts in a way emotionally that compounds the problem.
It's just a domino effect. Yeah.
It is. It's a horrible trap. It's very, very, it's like this deep, dark pit in which the sides are so slippery that the partners can't climb out of it. And yet, it's a very easy problem to solve. It's not difficult, but it seems impossible. And so I've written a book to help the couples who are tragically pained by this very difficult experience, and provide them like a ladder into that deep, dark pit so they can more easily climb out, right? I get a lot of men and couples who enter therapy with me, and they enter because of this problem. But what I notice is, if this problem has been unsolved for a significant period of time, months or years, the pain from this problem has now affected every part of their relationship or marriage. And so I must not only help solve this problem, but then repair the broader relationship.
Got it.
Right. And I've worked with couples like those seniors I talked about, couples in their 50s, 60s, 70s who've suffered from this problem for decades.
Got it.
And it's harmed their relationship tremendously, but it's not that difficult to fix. And they are so brightened and hopeful once it's fixed.
That's good to know that there is hope. There's a light at the end of that tunnel. Now, what else did you want our listeners and viewers to know about Under the Sheets today? What else is in store?
Well, I just want the listeners to know that on a regular basis, we're going to be talking about some very interesting, often sexy topics.
Ooh,
right?
Give us some
We're going to be
details.
you name it, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about orgasms. We'll talk about our bodies. We'll talk about our sex parts. Maybe I'll do a show on the clitoris, or maybe I'll do a show on penises, or maybe I'll do a show on all those things that have to happen above the sheets so really good things can happen below the sheets or under the sheets, right?
Beautiful. I love it. That's great conversation. My ears are like pinned here to the camera. Yes, for sure. And I think a lot of our listeners are too. That's exciting. All right. So yeah, we're going to get to the nitty-gritty details of going under the sheets and obviously what needs to happen. And for today, is there anything else you wanted to add about our conversation so far?
Well, the piece we talked about regarding loving ourselves, this is so important. And loving ourselves, it may sound like a mystery, but it really isn't. It's as simple as focusing your attention on your hand and choosing to look at your hand in a loving way, to looking upon it with a kind attitude. And when we do that, from a perspective of love, we are cleansing our hand. To take a little time and go within each day and go through every part of our body by focusing our loving attitude and attention on each part of our body, and look upon that part with kindness, with gratitude, with a loving attitude, right? And this cleans our body. It's not miraculous, and it's not instant. It's a little bit like watching grass grow. We do just a tiny bit every single day. But if we do this regularly, and we choose to look upon ourselves with a positive eye or positive attitude, before we know it, we feel lighter, we feel brighter, and we're able to live a better quality of life and better quality of love. So that's the message I want to leave our listeners with.
Well, I think that's a great one. And Andrew, Aaron, please tell us all how we can get in touch with you and how we can work with you.
I invite everyone to visit my website, to learn from the website, to enjoy what's there. The homepage, I think, is a little deceptive. It doesn't show all the material that's within the depths of the website. So explore, enjoy what's there, learn from what's there, as well as tune into continued Under the Sheets each week, Wednesdays at 2:30. Of course, also Under the Sheets is a podcast. It can be accessed through Spotify. It can be accessed through TuneIn Radio and Stitcher. And I believe soon it'll be on Apple Podcasts and Amazon, everywhere you find podcasts. This is an important subject for the quality of your life. Access this material so your love and your life are of better quality.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Andrew, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. And again, helpforpassion.com. Looking forward to our next session of Under the Sheets. You have a fantastic weekend.
It's great spending the time with you, Jill.
Same
so
here.
Nice.
Thank you so much. And everyone else the same. Thank you for joining us. And I hope you stay tuned for the next show. We'll have more coming right up after the break.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.